Welcome to SCI-Arc channel. I'm Margaret Griffin, principal of Griffin Enright Architects, and I'm here with Martin Gran from Snøhetta Design. He's partner and managing director of brand design. Snøhetta works on architecture, landscape, interiors, and brand design. And you use the term transpositioning to characterize the interaction among these disciplines. Can you give us an example of how this process works?
First of all, it's a very interesting concept of working with the transpositioning aspect in Snøhetta. We started for a long time ago to discuss and debate how we want to see ourselves working with problems and finding creative solutions of that without creating someone who is sort of owning the answer or getting stuck into authority roles in Snøhetta. So we tried to build down these things by trying to embrace the whole person into our conversation about whatever problem that we're trying to solve. That's when we start to transposition our roles.
When you say embracing the whole person, you mean to bring ideas to the table that are maybe outside of the particular problem that you're talking about, and that those ideas might come from like a personal experience that any individual might have? Absolutely,
and I think, those things very often happen, but what we see is that when someone that have a title or has experience for a long time, they sort of own the domain. Either we like it or not. A founding architect working in a company or in an office, that person has very much to say in those conversations. So we try to build away that. So let me give you one example of how we do that, and that is in comparison to multidisciplinary teams where we have architects and sociologists and interior architect look at the problem, the same problem with their point of view. We try to revolve the roles. So the architects becomes the sociologists and the sociologist becomes the interior architects. And when the architect becomes the graphic designer or the graphic designer becomes the architects, we think that you talk about the problem with the whole of you more than what you learned from the architectural school or the graphic design school. When we're actually making the drawings, the architect becomes the architect again. But we think that transpositioning term is helping us to make people maybe a little bit more safe. We don't want to hear what we're expected the architect to say. It's allowed for a graphic designer to come with ideas that no one maybe thought of.
Let's say an idea comes to the table and it might be a kind of foreign idea. Is there a kind of common practice of sort of leaning in and like sort of trying it out regardless of maybe how appropriate or inappropriate it might seem?
Yes, to make one example also there is that we have two very large communal tables in both our office in New York and in Oslo, and we try to inspire people to have their meetings and their working sessions on those communal tables. So it works.
So anyone can really pass by.
Right. They can pass by. Hey, what are you drawing? That looks like a la la la, and then people can start to contribute and say maybe people have some experience that we didn't know. So it's about these touch points that are not planned, that we also believe in, that also creates maybe a culture for more creativity. So it's very lively, and what we think that also breaks down the barriers between the different disciplines and the projects, and that the project group is sort of owning the cool project, and we want that to be everyone's.
When you're creating a project group, is there often a kind of balance between the four disciplines, or some project groups, are missing one of the one? How do you sort out the kind of balance of that on each project?
In Snøhetta, we try to embrace diversity as much as we can in project groups. So the first thing we do is that we try to mix as much women and men into the projects, and then we try to bring in old and young people into the group as well. And then we tried also to mix the different disciplines, so that regardless of if you're doing graphic design or landscape or interior architecture, you're at least two of the different disciplines in each project, so that we have different ideas.
Your background is more from the brand side. So what I was curious about is, working in this environment, how has that transposition methodology influenced the way that you think about brand design?
I think that any design projects has a lot to do with how we as humans interact with any design. And I think it's important for branding in graphic design and communication that it has built in some kind of credibility or authority into it. So I think the way we work in Snøhetta with all the different disciplines opens up a possibility to build some kind of realness or credibility into the projects. When we're doing, for instance, a branding project where we want to communicate to the world, whatever project we're doing, building it, regardless that we're not supposed to build anything. Maybe you were a client and you want a logo, and then we suggest that we can make you a logo, but we will also build it. So you have a physical representation of it, so people can go and interact with it, not only digitally or visually, but in the physical world.
In your role as a managing partner, what new perspectives, maybe from your other experiences, were you able to bring to that role?
I think I have learned absolutely more than I have giving back to Snøhetta in all modest ways. But we have a culture where everyone's opinion matters. Everyone has a voice in Snøhetta. There's an interesting discussion about the interaction between art and design, and are we artists or are we designers, or is it a craftsmanship, or is it only creative work, or where is there's a fine borderline between those different concepts. And I think maybe our discipline in brand design has contributed a little bit more with to be a little bit more commercial in our projects. To see that, yes, we can be artists, but we also need to sell somehow. We have to make this project happen. We have to get decisions in a group. And using techniques and our communication competence into our own projects and on our own organization, I think maybe I have contributed a little bit into that in the years that has gone.
As Snøhetta has developed a more global footprint, evolving from an office in Norway to a kind of office is in many cities all over the world, I was wondering to what degree the design culture has evolved. If there's any kind of differences among the places.
It's a very interesting question, and I think it's an important question too, because many times we speak with guests or clients, or we do lectures, and people are a little bit fascinated about how we work. And then people try to adopt that way of thinking into their organization, but they don't succeed that well, because it's not in the culture. So Snøhetta started off almost 30 years ago with a clear perspective of this different disciplines approach. They were among very few architects at that time, including landscapes architects, into the process of creating the architecture in itself. They wanted the landscape architect to be a part of the strategy and the concept and the idea. So when you start with that at the very, very beginning, and that's sort of embedded into what you are, it's not a culture strategy, it's what you have become. That has been among a couple of other important aspects of the Snøhetta culture, has always been there from that little group that actually started here in LA. We have now 8 different offices. There are some key factors to trying to walk the talk about improving social interaction, and that is that you don't see any physical evidence of hierarchy in Snøhetta, so that we not only mix the disciplines, but also mix how we sit to facilitate that competence will communicate between the teams. And also the last one is that we have a very strong belief in transparency, so that people have to be open, and you have to be open-minded about how you work.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so enjoyable to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching the SCI-Arc channel.
Dejamos